Hi, so we're going to look at Lab 1. So there's three parts to Lab 1 in LinuxZoo, and there's also an optional extra PDF lab you can go through and just use the LinuxZoo Kali VM. So once you've started your Kali VM, if you select Kali VM, start and then connect via the web GUI VNC, you will get this. You can log in using the user and password specified on Moodle, and then we can start using some of the commands. So if you have two windows open, two tabs open, I should say. So if you have one tab in LinuxZoo with the Kali tutorials, so if you go into 1A, we have the first Kali tutorial, which is a kind of gentle Linux reminder / introduction. And if you have a second tab, which is your VNC, and ignore that, I'll kill that one. So this is your VNC GUI connection to the virtual machine, which is running on our servers here. So we can now do some stuff with Kali. Okay, so we have this applications menu. So you've got all this normal Linux things. You have your terminal window you can open from here. You can do the same thing as the shortcut up here we've got. This is your iceweasel browser. And all the fun stuff, which we're going to use later in the course, is under Kali Linux. So this is where most of the tools, there's about 300 tools, are all stored in this menu here. So for this week, we're going to do some basic Linux revision. So I quite like to use the clear command. So the clear command possibly isn't mentioned, but it just gives you a clean window to work in. And if we have a look at the lab, we'll see the first thing is accessing Kali. So if we check that our VNC is working, so we haven't got an SSH telnet basic console window connected at the moment, we've just got our VNC web connection, which is this. So we'll just use that one for this lab. So the first thing we do is we're looking at creating and navigating directories. So CD and PWD. So CD will take you to a certain directory. It takes parameters, and PWD is print the working directory. So that tells you where we are. If we do CD -H, if we do CD -help, it still doesn't give you anything. No, it just gives you usage. Okay, so basically it's saying your usage for CD is CD, couple of options, and these are optional options because they're square brackets, and then the directory, which again is optional because CD on its own takes you to the home directory of the user you're logged in. So if I go to there and I print the working directory, I'm actually in the what's known as the root directory, which is a little bit confusing as we are logged in as the root user. If we do CD without any parameters and print working directory, we'll find we've actually gone to our home directory, which is root, which is slightly confusing. So you can see we're logged in as root into this machine, which we'll go into later. So that's your basic use of CD and PWD. So if we clear this just now, and if we have a look what we're actually being asked to do in the tutorial, so it's asking you to use PWD just to see where you start off. So I think we've done that. Oh no, you've got to actually put that in. So if we do root, for example, and then check, so we've passed that. So this is kind of formative feedback you're getting here throughout. So it's not so much about getting the right answer here. Don't just use the check button over and over and over. The best thing to do is to actually understand what you're trying to do, and then if you understand it, get the button to correct your whatever it is. There's various ways of answering the questions. There's boxes, there's drop downs and things like that. But the main thing is to understand what you're doing. I'd rather you did parts of the lab slowly and understood it rather than race through and pressing lots of check buttons and getting lots of green things. Okay, which will maybe later on in the course will make more sense. So we're going to have a look at making some directories. So make dir is the command we're going to use to make directories. So again, go over to our Linux console and we check the help. Now I know that it's a minus help. So minus help. Before you use any commands, especially these offensive commands, we want to be checking the help. So we have a quick look, even these basic commands. We see that make dir takes some optional options and then it takes a mandatory parameter, which is a directory. So obviously you can't make a directory if you don't tell it which directory to make. So it's going to by default make the directory in the directory you're in. So if we look at the directory we're in and then we make directories, they're going to be under that /root. So they're going to be /root/ another directory. So if we see what the tutorial is looking for us to make, it's looking for us to make magic, happy and sad. So I've obviously done this before. Yeah, so these obviously exist somewhere. So if we check where we are with pwd, we're in /root, and I've already created these directories. So there's magic, happy and sad. So that's why we're getting this green light already. So what we want is to create another 2 directories within the magic directory. So we can use our cd command to move to magic. So a really good thing about Unix or Linux is the tab. So if you say MA and tab, it knows that you mean magic because there's nothing else in that directory with MA as the start characters. So tab's quite handy. So we can cd to magic. We can use our ls command to see what's in it, and there's nothing in it. So we can use our make dir command to create, what was it I wanted you to create? dir1 and dir2. So you can do dir1 and then you can make dir2, or you can just do dir1 and dir2 with a comma between them, and that should now make them. So the ls command is very useful. We can use some of the parameters of the ls command, some of the arguments to do different things. So ls-l is giving us a long listing. We can now tell that these are directories by the D, not files, and it tells us when they were created and who owns them and what's in it. And I've got an error because you don't use a comma, you just use a space. Excellent. So if we check that, it will say failed because I've created one with a comma. So what I can do is remove dir1, comma, obviously a little bit rusty, and there's nothing, it's gone. And I can make dir1, and that should now have them both. It should pass the check. Excellent. So you can try the rest of the cd and ls command comes next. So you cd and directories. And now we're looking at the ls command. So something to mention here, if you've not used Linux lately, is the man command. So this is the manual command, which gives you a little bit more help than the basic help about the arguments. So if you use man and then a command after it, you will get manual pages. So this gives you a little bit more help about certain commands. So in this case, we can see that it gives you details of the command, details of the usage, and details of all the flags. So if we use space to go down, we can page our way through and we can go back with Control B, forward with Control F, or F in this case. So F and B takes you forward and back, and Q quits you out of man. Okay, so that's a really handy command to be able to check the help on all different things in detail. If you just remember the Q to get out of it. So what do we want to do with ls? Okay, so we want to look in our home directory, so it's a root because we're logged in as root, and we're going to use the -a flag, which we may or may not have noticed there when we did our man. Shows you hidden files. So another handy thing in Linux is to use the up and down arrows, or there are control keys as well. So if we go up, we can go back through the last few commands, and if we go down, we can go forward through the command list. So that's quite a handy thing too, as well as the tab for lazy people like myself. So man ls, let's have another look at this. So -a actually means do not ignore entries at all. So do not ignore hidden entries which start with dots in Unix. So if I quit out of that, let me do clear, do ls -a, will give us everything. So it gives us the hidden files and directories. So if we do pwd to check where we are, we're actually in root magic. So we can use the ... parameter, which means go back up a directory in the tree with cd. So if we check where we are now, we should be under root. And if we use our up arrow to take us back to our ls -a command, we don't have to type it again. And we can see it's now showing us many hidden files and directories. So the directories are being shown in blue here, and the files are being shown in white. So if we just do an ls to compare, you'll see that it only shows, and it's only showing directories because all the rest are hidden. So let's have a look back at the lab and see what else we need to do. So you can try these with the -a yourself. So it's also using the long listing, which we've briefly touched on already. So it wants us to do a long listing of it, /etc/group. So you're going to need to find that directory, find your way there. So if I do a long listing here, it's just going to give us those particular directories which we can see with the short listing. So the same as that in terms of directories. So if we use both -a and -l, it should give us everything in a long listing format. And now you can see the blue directories and the white are files, in this case a hidden file. Another parameter that I use, which Gordon says that's archaic and nobody uses, I quite like -f, which actually puts slashes in behind your directories. So if you happen to not have the colorization on, -f is quite nice also. So if I go back to our home directory, which should be /root. So one way of getting back to home in Unix and Linux is just to use the tilde. So cd tilde should take you to home. That should be /root because we're logged in as root. And then we can do, let's do -F to see our directories highlighted there. Oh no, in fact we were in root, apologies. Let's go back to root. So this is our root directory. And let's do an ls here. Okay, so this is basically the root of the entire file system. So you can see everything here. So if we do an ls -F here, we should see all the directories. So there's only one file, and everything else is, oh, two files, and everything else is a directory here. If we use our ls-l with f as well, so you don't need to space, you can do that, or you can just list up the flags. We should get a long listing of that directory with slashes noting our files, so we can use this to scroll back up. So let's have a look at what else the tutorial, basic tutorial's looking at. So you got -f. Oh, it has put -f in just for me. Okay, so we're looking at relative and absolute path. So we kind of touched on this with the dot. We also have dot, which is the current path, and slash, which takes you right back to the slash, or it tells you to move to a relative path. So in this example here, we're going to move to this particular path, which is giving you the entire path based on the root directory and then all the subdirectories from there. This is a relative path because it's telling you to go back from where you are, and PWD is obviously printing these out. So you can go through these and you can compare the different relative paths where you're moving from whichever directory you're in, or the absolute path where you're specifying the entire path. So it's a bit like specifying a file name in Windows with C:// and then every single directory up, including your file name. So that would be your entire file path. Or if you're in a folder, just looking at the file is relative. Maybe not the best example. So I think you can manage to do some of those on your own. So let's try one. Let's try this one here. So cd/user. So that's going to take you from the root into user directory. So that's an absolute file path. If we do cwd, we're in root user. And then I think it's telling us to cd to a relative path to lib. So if we have a look at what's in here, lib should be in here, which it is. So that's a directory because it's blue, so we can check with the -f. And there you are, it's a directory. And we can cd into lib, which would be the same as saying, so if we go back to root, that would be exactly the same as saying lib. Okay. If we go up a directory and then say cd user lib, tells you exactly where to go, which is identical to saying from here cd lib. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so we'll have a quick look at the second tutorial. So this is looking at the grep command. So we're looking at basic grep, which is taking something which you're searching for and searching something for this search pattern. That's not very well put. So we've got a kind of pattern here. In this case, it's just a literal string, and we're searching this file, and this is the entire file path for that. So let's try that. Actually forgotten what we're searching for. Pendanced. Odd. And I'm not going to be allowed to paste. User shared dict words. Okay. So we can use the tab, share, di, dict, words. And we get nothing back. I suspect there's a typo here. Aha, he's looking for pendants. Okay, so what we want is to use up arrow because we don't want to type all that again. And we want to do pendants. There we are. So out of the words file, which is a big dictionary file, there's two words that contain pendants. So grep can be used for filtering, basically. So we can use it for searching and filtering. So it's very, very useful when you use it, as well as literal strings, you can actually use patterns here. So you can grep patterns out of files, very useful for things like log file analysis. And you can also pipe the output from grep into another grep command and do more and more granularity. So I think that's what the second, WPA. So if we have a quick look at the words file, so to list out a file we can use cat, which will spit the entire file out. In fact, let's just use this to save me typing it in again. So if we use cat, that's going to list everything out just in a oneer, so it doesn't give us much control. So another thing we can do is use more and less. So again, let's just do that. So if we use less, it has the same navigation as man, so we can use space back and forward to go through the file. Use Control F, Control B to go back and forward, page at a time. We can search for things, so we can search for pendants, for example, and it finds them. And we can use Q to quit. So that's less. So less is excellent. More goes forward, less allows you to go back and searches and things like that. So the less command is very useful. So I think the next thing he wanted to do is use a pipe. Aha. So what he's doing here is he's actually piping and filtering at the same time. So he's filtering all the lines which contain the word danced, and then he's using the pipe, which allows you to take the output from one command, so the output from this command, instead of returning it to the screen, as we did before, he's piping that output, which will be, if we did the same with pendants, it would be the 2 lines, and then he's piping that as input to the WC command, which has no relation to toilets and is actually word count. And word count with a parameter of -L actually gives you the line count. So if we do it for pendants, we should get 2. So it basically counts, or gives you the number of instances of the output for the grep. Oops, daisy. So we go back in here and we try that for the one we did before. So we grep for pendants and then we pipe out into word count -L, you'll get 2. Okay, so again, if you want to check the help on word count, you can check the help and it will give you some more details. So there you go, -L is the number of lines. So the number of new lines returned, which basically gives you the number of lines. So note that this scrolls off the top of the screen, so we could use this to go back up and read things, or we could do pipe into less, which is quite clever. So we're going to take the output, which is going to the screen, and we're going to actually send it to less instead. So in that case, it's actually not helping us much. There's only 1 line that we're missing. So we move this down, we're only actually missing 1 line. So that's not fantastic, but if we did something like our cat, let's find our cat. Let's in fact use history. Okay, so history is another good command. So we can use our history to list all the historical commands here. So the same as going up and down, you can see that goes through our historical commands, the same as listed by our history command there, and that's our last command. So you got history, you got help less, which is that one, and then you have this one, and then this one. So if we want to use one of those, we can actually say use command, and we do our less would be 93 if we want to use them. But if we just want to go up to our cat command, which just spat everything out to the screen, and then we pipe that into less, what you'll find is it's pretty much like saying less and the file name. Okay, Q to quit. So that hopefully gives you enough to do the grep tutorial, which I think is just a combination of various different things to do with pipes. We've also got redirects, which is the same as very similar to pipe, just redirecting our output. And he's using cut also. So cut's a very handy command where you can cut certain fields. So that's saying cut field 1 out of a file. So that's quite handy also. I think you should be able to do most of that. So let's have a look at the next one. Okay, so